Pistorius walks free. He's out on R1 million bail until the trial. It could be months. You're watching Arise News Hour, and that is our top story. The magistrate spent 2 hours delivering his ruling. Pistorius can't travel and has to report to police twice a week. We have reaction and analysis.
Also in the programme this evening, after one of Syria's bloodiest weeks, is the civil war reaching a turning point after 300 people die in a spate of bombings? Plus, Nigeria, terrorism and the Iranian connection. We have a special report. And in Tinseltown, it's frocks and rocks on Academy Awards weekend.
Now, the Blade Runner Oscar Pistorius was freed on bail today by Magistrate Desmond Nair in Pretoria. He'll be back in court on June the 4th, charged with murdering his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp at his home on Valentine's Day. Now, bail was set at R1 million, that's about $100,000. He cannot travel and has to report to police twice a week. And he's banned from drinking alcohol and having guns.
Mr. Nair had his day in the spotlight. He took 2 hours to deliver his ruling. It included criticism of Hilton Buerta, the officer in charge of the police investigation, who was replaced when it emerged that he too faced murder allegations. The Pistorius family wept, embraced and said they were relieved.
It took nearly 2 hours for the magistrate to sum up the case. Then, with a dramatic pause, he made his decision.
I come to the conclusion that the accused has made a case to be released on bail.
And when it came, the gasps and cheers were not only made in court, they were made all over the world. Oscar Pistorius broke down in tears, just like he had throughout the 4-day hearing. From his family, prayers, tears and hugs.
Although we're obviously relieved that Oscar's been granted bail, this is still a very sad time for the family of Reva and for us all. We are grateful that the magistrate recognized the validity and the strength of our application. As the family, we are convinced that Oscar's version of what happened on that terrible night will be proved to be true. Thank you.
Bail was set at R1 million or £72,000. Pistorius was ordered to hand over his passports and report to a police station between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. every Monday and Friday. He was told to avoid his home in Pretoria, the scene where his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp was shot dead on the 14th of February. Pistorius says he mistook her for an intruder and killed her by accident. The prosecution argued that the couple had had a row.
And I believe the criticism doesn't mean we should actually lose hope in this case. We are going to meet Pistorius again soon, around June, to make sure that we continue with this case as we have planned.
Pistorius was taken away to an undisclosed location. The next hearing in the case has been set for the 4th of June. Lance Santos, Arise News.
Well, our correspondent Mandy Wiener has been in court all day today and indeed all week, and she joins us now from Pretoria. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Mandy. What was it like when the news was finally delivered to the court?
Well, I can tell you that the courtroom erupted with screams of yes from Oscar Pistorius' family as the magistrate Desmond Nair handed down his decision. But very interestingly, Oscar Pistorius did not move at all. He just sat there, his shoulders slumped, his head downcast, and he continued to cry as he did through most of that judgment. So while there were celebrations, Oscar Pistorius didn't seem to show that kind of emotion at all.
As you say, it took a very long time to get to that point, and during that time a lot of the case was outlined yet again. Was there anything new heard?
Not really, but what we did hear from the magistrate is what he accepted and what he didn't accept in coming to his decision. So, for example, he was highly critical of the investigating officer Hilton Botha and the concessions that he made, particularly around issues like cell phones. Why didn't he go and get Oscar Pistorius and Riva Steenkamp's cell phone records? Why didn't he make more of an effort? Why didn't he make more of an effort, for example, to show that Oscar Pistorius has this apparently violent streak? And the magistrate also saying that he had great difficulty with a number of things in Oscar Pistorius's version. For example, why did he rush towards the danger in the bathroom? Why didn't he check to see if his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp was okay before he did anything else? Why didn't he shout to see who was actually in the toilet before he opened fire? So while we didn't hear anything new, we got a really good sense from the magistrate about what he accepted and what he didn't.
And at the point when the magistrate described how Oscar carried Riva down and she died in his arms, what was his reaction then?
Oh, he broke down at that point. While he tried to maintain his composure for most of the judgment, he broke down at that one point. He leaned forward, he put his head into both of his hands, and he began to sob. He had a white tissue in his hand, but his shoulders were heaving up and down. And it's always at the points where Riva Steenkamp's name is mentioned, or their relationship is mentioned, or the post-mortem is mentioned, that he broke down. Other than that, he tried to remain composed throughout.
So what happened at the end of it? We got reports that they had cleared a special space outside the court. Was that for a quick getaway?
No, what happened was outside the courtroom they cleared a space because his uncle gave an impromptu press conference. His uncle Arnold spoke about the fact that the family is relieved, but also that it is a family in mourning because of Riva's death. Also spoke about the fact that they believe Oscar Pistorius' version of events that happened that tragic night, and they believe that that will prevail. Other than that, there's likely to be a quick getaway here. I have no doubt they'll try and spirit him out the building. He first needs to go and pay 100,000 rand of his R1 million bail. He needs to pay that to the bail office, and then I have no doubt he'll be spirited out of here in a convoy of cars to an undisclosed location.
Thanks very much indeed. Well, now to get some perspective on today's bail hearing and what it may or may not indicate for the trial ahead, we're joined by South African criminal lawyer Tyrone Maseko from Johannesburg. Tyrone, thanks very much indeed for joining us again. So what now?
Well, what happens now is obviously Oscar has been released on bail and he's due to appear again in court on the 4th of June. And basically what this is, the magistrate would have given them an opportunity, both parties, to actually investigate the circumstances of this crime, and on the 4th of June, then he should be, or the parties would be in a better position to communicate to the magistrate the extent to which they're ready for trial.
Do you think we'll be hearing any new details on the case on the 4th of June?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, those are typically what we call pre-trial procedures. So what is likely to happen is that not much is gonna happen between now and the 4th of June. So when the matter is heard on the 4th of June, or when the parties appear on the 4th of June, the discussion really will center around how far have you come in your preparation for trial. The crucial thing is, remember, all of this will be done in a lead up to the trial date, which hasn't been set as yet. And you got to remember that even though the proceedings to date have proceeded in the magistrate's court, ultimately this matter is due to be heard in the High Court, which is a superior court. And so for all intents and purposes, the pre-trial procedures will be conducted in facilitation of the trial whenever that will be.
Going back to the bail itself, were you surprised when he got bail? It is a Schedule 6 offence.
Not at all. I mean, as I indicated when I spoke to you on Wednesday, that given the performance of the investigating officer under cross-examination by the defence's counsel, Barry Rue, it didn't fill one with a lot of confidence in the state's version. And so, you know, that version having been tested and basically bulleted by the defense, it sort of hinted at the fact that the state may not actually have such a strong case against Oscar Pistorius, which is not to say that they will not be successful in the trial, but at this stage, to remand one in custody and under circumstances where the state has not demonstrated that it's got a strong case against the accused would not be in the interest of justice. And that's what the magistrate would be considering in this matter ultimately in deciding whether to grant bail, is whether it's in the interest of justice, obviously looking at a number of factors. And one of them is whether or not the state has shown that it's got a strong case against the accused Oscar Pistorius. They failed in that matter patently, as the magistrate demonstrated in his judgment.
Indeed. Do you think Hilton Botha would have performed better if he'd actually spoken in and given his testimony in Afrikaans, which is his mother tongue?
I'm not so sure. I mean, it's not exactly as if he didn't come out as an articulate person. I don't think the difficulty was in expressing himself in the language in which he did. I think the problem was really in the preparation of their case, the state's case. I don't think they were very thorough in the investigation, as did the defense. And I think that's where they came short eventually.
Well, now they've dropped Hilton Botha, and they've got Lieutenant General Munu, who's got 32 years of experience. What difference do you think that will make?
Difficult to say at this point, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's a decision that sort of made itself. There was absolutely no way, it was untenable that they could have retained Hilton Botha on the matter. For obvious reasons, really. I mean, he's facing 7 charges of attempted murder. He now has to focus on his own trial, and Lord knows how long that's going to take. And so there's no way that he would have had the necessary focus and the ability to actually concentrate on this matter and give it the attention that it requires. And so at the end of the day, it was necessary that he be removed from the matter. How the new investigative team is going to perform, well, we're yet to see. And it does, unfortunately for the state, place them in a disadvantaged position in that, evidence has already been collected. Now they have to work their way back before they can work forward again in gathering new evidence. And so they are at this point at a disadvantage. But I think they've got sufficient time to actually go back, do proper investigation, make sure that by the time that this matter goes to trial, they're prepared.
You're a defence lawyer. If you were Oscar Pistorius' lawyer, how would you be feeling now?
Quite confident, but cautiously so. I mean, you've got to remember that a bail hearing is not really indicative of what's going to happen at trial. A trial like in a matter like this is likely to last for a long time, and there's going to be a number of witnesses called, and so the defense has got to prepare well, and they have to have their ducks in a row, and so will the state effectively. And so I think that there's still a lot to come out of this matter, and there might still be a lot of surprises that are going to come out. And at this point, we've really only heard from the investigating officer. But even then, the investigating officer was talking almost hearsay evidence in that, he was basically communicating what witnesses are going to say. We're going to hear directly from those witnesses, and those witnesses are going to be put under severe cross-examination to test their version of events. Yeah. And I think that's where one is likely to get a proper indication of where this matter is going to go.
Heather Scott, they're talking to criminal lawyer Tyrone Maseko. Now we're going to switch gears and go into some business news and a big week for Africa's crucial mining industry. Our economics and business editor, Michael Wilson, here, as always, with that and more. Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's been a week of clashes, closures and profit cuts. Anglo American Platinum closed all its operations on Tuesday after workers stayed away following riots on Monday. The world's largest bullion producer, Anglo Gold Ashanti, announced a plunge in fourth quarter earnings. And the head of global mining company BHP Billiton stepped down after a 43% slump in first half profits. EcoBank Natural Resources Specialist Rolake Akinkugbe joins me now. Well, there's a load of new people in charge, really. It's as if the old guard's gone. Things look very different in the mining industry, don't they? A new time perhaps of austerity, do you think?
Perhaps of austerity, and it's quite interesting because the new guys coming in a time of great economic difficulty. When you look at the financial sector, for instance, banks are increasingly reluctant to lend money for large-scale mining projects and resource projects globally. So these guys are going to need to find alternative sources of funding. And
very interesting indeed. So what are they going to do?
Well, one of the things they have to start to do is to be a bit more accountable to shareholders. We saw a lot of the acquisition bids fall through over the last few years, something which may actually have accounted for the departure of some of the guys at the helm of these organizations. So it's going to be all about belt tightening and cost cutting in the industry.
Well, exactly. I mean, you got the impression that some of these acquisitions that the old guard made just didn't work out.
No, not necessarily. And one of the reasons they didn't work out is because if you look at global commodity price cycles, they probably misread it, and they were probably overly optimistic about how the commodities demand was going to be sustained over the long haul. And we saw a couple of days ago with the US Fed and China signaling lower than expected demand for some of the key global commodities such as iron ore and crude oil.
What about, let's talk about China if we may. I mean, is that going to be a big pull on demand, do you think, in the years to come? Or is it cyclical, as you suggest?
It's cyclical, but China is increasingly an important driver of global consumption of most commodities, whether you're looking at hydrocarbons or whether you're looking at precious metals or base metals. So I think what happens in China, and including more recently in the real estate sector in China, where demand for steel is a key driver, I think China is going to be an important factor in that global commodity cycle.
Mining stocks, of course, take up a lot of the global stock markets in major terms, London, Africa and so on. Do you think that they are a good investment now, or would you advise people to wait until you see how the new guard actually makes them profitable again?
Well, if I really knew the answer to that, I'd be a millionaire. But it depends on what type of investor you are. Sure. Are you an investor who's just interested in speculating in stocks, or are you looking at putting boots on the ground in countries like South Africa? If you are, you have to consider labour issues, you have to consider exporting and transporting your minerals outside of the country, so infrastructure spending is going to be a big issue. The question is the real balance between risk and reward, and what we'll actually see in the months ahead is a lot of companies like AngloGold Ashanti and Goldfields of South Africa spinning off different parts of their asset portfolio in order to reduce shareholders' exposure to risk in those markets.
This is a story we'll be covering for a very long time. Rolaki, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Angola is about to issue its first Euro bonds this year to try to raise $1 billion. No details so far about how and when, but it follows similar moves by its neighbours Zambia and Namibia. Angola has achieved rapid growth since the end of its 27-year civil war in 2002. It's the second biggest oil producer in Africa after Nigeria. The economy grew by just over 7% in 2012 and is set to match that this year. Angola will have been encouraged by the success of Zambia's Eurobond issue last year, which was oversubscribed 15 times. So to the commodities, and oil rose as evidence of improving business morale in Germany bolstered sentiment after 2 days of losses. Gold also firmed as assets seen as higher risk like stocks and other commodities recovered, implying that this week's sell-off might have been a bit overdone. The rand held steady against the dollar and ended the week within the range of the last fortnight. The naira reached its highest point in 4 weeks. The gains attributed to inflows of $100 million from an oil producer, and the shilling appreciated the most in more than a week. South African stocks were steady a day after booking their biggest one-day fall in nearly a year as shares of mining firms recovered. Nigeria shares rose to their highest since 2008 on gains from the biggest listed firm Dangote, which accounts for a third of the market cap of the index. 34,000 sort of seen as a new support level there. Now, South Africa's Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, will present the country's budget to Parliament on Wednesday. It's expected to outline measures to deal with massive youth unemployment, but needs to deal with an economy that's slowing, inflationary worries and key industries in turmoil. I asked our correspondent, Sidi Bishop in Johannesburg, what business wants from the budget.
Okay, three things. Tax relief. They say the economy has been so down that the government should consider actually helping some companies in terms of reducing some tax burden. They're saying the government has also neglected the small and medium-sized businesses which were meant to create jobs. And as you know, we've had difficulty in creating jobs in this country. They're saying they should relax some tax laws for the small, medium-sized companies, and they should also help them to understand some of their tax bills. They're saying as well the government should refocus on putting money, dragging money away from infrastructural development. If you remember, Michael, last week we were talking about the government having set aside money for 30 million jobs, and we're saying, how is the government going to do that? They're saying the government perhaps should shift the focus from infrastructural development. They should rather focus on putting money into the services sector, which is the only sector in this country that is creating jobs at the moment, that is growing, but it is short of skills. If the government could develop the youth and make sure that the youth is skilled and help the services sector into creating more jobs.
Sounds as though there's very little room for manoeuvre, but having said that, what do the general public actually want out of it?
Their list of demand is longer than the companies. They want jobs. They want better housing. They want water and sanitation. They want more electricity. They want toilets that are flushable. They want their social grants to increase, especially the childcare social grants, because those are a joke. Those are ridiculous. They're around 150 Rand at the moment. They're saying crime should also be prevented. A lot of money should go into crime fighting. A lot of money should go into creating police stations in the townships. A lot of money should go into equipping the police with vehicles, not guns really, but equipping them into being able to fight crime effectively.
So, Sidi, there's a sort of international incident with the French, isn't there, about rooibos tea?
Yes, the French are not the only people who have fought with the South African government about the patent of the rooibos tea. The Americans also fought with the South African government some years ago after some woman sold a trademark who was manufacturing cosmetics here in South Africa to an American cosmetic company. This is a very, very important trademark because it generates millions and millions of dollars per annum. And you would understand why people would want to grab the trademark from South Africans and use it themselves. So it is a very, very volatile situation that could last for years if the South African government doesn't get it right.
Sidi Bishop, thank you very much indeed. I'm just nipping off for a quick cup of rooibos, I think. Still to come, the comedian holding the political power in Europe and Italy. Jeff.
Thank you very much, Michael. We'll see you in a bit. Now we're going to move to events further afield into the Middle East. And it's the end of one of the bloodiest weeks in Syria since the start of the revolt against the government, which began 2 years ago. Coordinated bombings in several Syrian cities killed more than 300 people on Thursday. The deadliest attack was here in the capital, Damascus, where a single car bomb claimed the lives of over 90 people. The powerful explosion was close to the offices of President Bashar al-Assad's ruling Ba'ath Party. State media and foreign monitors both say most of the victims were civilians and that children were among the dead. The UN estimates that more than 70,000 people have died since the start of the civil war in 2011. Now, Stephen Starr was witness to the uprising in Syria, and he has written a book about the 5 years he spent there. He joins us live via Skype. Stephen, these latest pictures, heart-wrenching to say the least. In a civil war that's lasted 2 years, you heard the numbers, more than 70,000 killed. Do you think this is an indication, the latest bombings, is this an indication of the end of days for this regime?
Well, I think we've been talking about end of days for the regime since last summer. I mean, 4 senior security officers were killed in central Damascus last July, and at that time everyone was saying that this is the beginning of the end of the regime. The same month, rebels took control of a number of areas of the northern city of Aleppo, and at that time, many people were saying that this is the beginning of the end. So, I think we need to be careful a little bit here. I think that these bombings, whoever carries them out, we're not quite sure, but I think, they don't signal that this is the beginning of the end. It does signal, I think, that the regime is at least ceding more and more control, certainly control of security in Damascus, and obviously Damascus being the capital is the most important area for the regime and for the rebels. Whoever takes Damascus controls Syria.
It looks like everything that the international community has tried, Stephen, has failed. In your opinion, after spending 5 years there, what's it going to take?
Well, what's it going to take for the international community to intervene, or what's it going to take for the conflict to end? I mean, it seems the international community has very little appetite to intervene militarily, at least. They don't trust the rebels. They don't know who the rebels are. We've seen this emergence of an Islamist group that's supposedly linked to Al Qaeda called Jabhat al-Nusra. And these guys are also fighting against the regime, Bashar al-Assad's regime. So, the international community doesn't know essentially who they should help. They know that the regime is murdering people every day, that it's launching missiles, that it's carrying out airstrikes on civilian populations, but they don't know exactly how to go about. And obviously there's a certain disaccord in terms of the diplomatic route as well. Russia and China blocking any kind of resolutions on what's happening in Syria at the UN Security Council. I think what's going to happen is that rebels are going to, be able to take more and more territory across the country as kind of regime forces kind of, become less kind of, less secure, and even that they have less supplies at the moment. There's been 2 hard years of war. The regime is had to call on many more new recruits. From certainly Syrians from inside the country. So I think I think the rebels do have the bit between their teeth, and I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, Stephen, in story after story that comes out of Syria, the Syrians themselves seem to think that the rest of the world has forgotten them, that they're just watching the story unfolding and doing nothing. Do you agree?
It depends what Syrians you speak to. If you speak to Syrians in the area where this bombing occurred yesterday in central Damascus, the majority of the people there would say we want peace and quiet, we want security in our streets, we want to have electricity every day, we want to be able to pay for food and that. And if that means we're not overly interested in politics, if that means that the Bashar al-Assad's regime provides that security, then this is what we'll go with. But at the same time, if you speak from people from areas of, let's say, in Aleppo that have been subjected to government shellings and airstrikes, speak to these people and they will tell you that we want international community today as soon as possible. We want airstrikes.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Stephen. We're going to have to leave it at that. Thank you, Stephen Starr, there talking to us live via Skype. Heather.
You're watching the Arise News Hour. Now, the Japanese Prime Minister is meeting Barack Obama in Washington. Tensions with China could be near the top of the agenda. Now, our Washington correspondent Layla McDowell joins us live from the US Capitol. Hello, Layla. So do you think that will be top of the agenda for Shinzo Abe and Barack Obama?
Well, it certainly is for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was elected in December and ran on a platform of being tougher on China, particularly around the dispute over the remote series of islands in the East China Sea. He also has promised to loosen restrictions on the armed forces in Japan, and both of those items top his agenda. President Obama is looking to strengthen the decades-long key security alliance with Japan, strengthen economic ties, and of course discuss North Korea's recent nuclear test.
So it wasn't so long ago that Japan and the US was the most strategic bilateral alliance, but that seems to have gone away now, hasn't it? Are they wanting to sort of re-strengthen those ties?
Well, that's exactly right. The security alliance, particularly for the United States, is a priority. China obviously is the big economic powerhouse, and President Obama has to do a dance between the tensions between the two countries. China is already upset with remarks made by Prime Minister Abe about China, in which he said that China has an ingrained need to create conflict with its neighbors over territories. But President Obama is going to have to kind of, split the baby, if you will, because Japan is a very critical military and security partner of the United States and has been for many, many years.
Let's talk about the woman in New Hampshire who's had her citizenship revoked. Tell us more about that story.
Well, 43-year-old Beatriz Munyenyezi walked out of that courtroom 10 years ago an American citizen, the very same courtroom. Yesterday, she walked out. A convicted criminal is facing jail, fines, and deportation. She was charged with masking on her application for citizenship the fact that she was involved with the Rwandan genocide. Witnesses in what was her second trial placed her at a checkpoint where Tutsis were identified and killed. She claims that she is innocent, but will likely have to press those claims from outside the country.
Leila, thanks very much indeed for joining us. That was Leila McDowell live in Washington. Jeff.
Thanks, Heather. And police in Peru have arrested several members of a gang who rob motorists stuck in traffic. The criminals operate a smash and grab sting on the streets of the capital, Lima. Jerome Evans reports.
Within a flash, they're in the car, they grab what they can, and then make a run for it. The gunfire is from the police. They've been targeting criminal gangs who take advantage of Lima's congested streets and steal from cars stuck in traffic.
I was driving with the window down and there was traffic. The guy took advantage of it to stick his hand in the window and take my purse, where I had my money and cell phone.
But the thieves don't always get away with it. Police and members of the public chase this robber. When they catch him, he's handcuffed and taken to jail. Police are keen to show the public when they make an arrest. These men are members of a notorious criminal gang called Los Coyotes. They are paraded in front of the cameras to give the country confidence that authorities are tackling the problem.
We weren't expecting a crime wave. We made a crime map of South America and found that here, in comparison with other cities, the levels of crime are not out of control. That's also because we have drastic laws. Here in Peru, we have life sentences.
But for the moment, those life sentences are yet to deter Lima's traffic jam robbers. Jerome Evans, Arise News.
And here's a reminder, you're watching the News Hour right here on Arise. The Blade Runner goes free. Oscar Pistorius is out on £1 million bail until the trial begins, and it could be months. The magistrate spent 2 hours delivering his ruling. Pistorius will surrender his passport and handguns, but tonight he is free. After 300 died in one of the bloodiest days since the start of the uprising against Syria's government, there's speculation that the civil war has reached a turning point. Plus, a surge in terror activity in northern Nigeria, and security services are pointing the finger at Tehran.
Also ahead in the show tonight, it's Frocks and Rocks in Tinseltown as the stars get ready for Oscars weekend.
Now, Nigeria's Secret Service says it has arrested what it's calling a terrorist cell, a group of locals planning attacks on American and Israeli targets in and around Nigeria. One of the 3 men facing espionage charges has been paraded before reporters, and he says he was blackmailed into working for Iran. Arise News' Nat Lowe has the details.
Nigeria's State Security Service arrested Abdullahi Mustafa Berende and 2 other Nigerians in December. The Security Service says it was put on alert after several suspicious trips to Iran, where Berende interacted with Iranians in a high-profile terrorist network. They say he was asked to provide information on potential terror targets.
His Iranian sponsors requested that he identifies and gathers intelligence on public places and prominent hotels frequented by Americans and Israelis to facilitate attacks. He was also to provide specific details on the following targets: organizations like USAID, Max, SIM International Shipping Company, AA Consulting, Peace Corps, and the Jewish Cultural Center, Chabad, in Lagos.
Berende is the leader of a Shiite sect in Ilorin, Kwara State. He says he was approached and groomed by an Iranian offering him help.
I was planning having a business headquartered in Lagos with an outlet in Ilorin, Kwara State. He offered to help. he offered to assist. Having made a mistake, a big mistake of exposing everything of me to him, he was able to understand my weakness. He capitalized on it, and since that moment, so he's been playing games with me. That was very, very late before I realized that this man was up to something.
According to Nigeria's This Day newspaper, Iran's foreign minister today denied that Berende had been trained by Iran. Nat Lowe, Arise News.
Now, yesterday's appearance for reporters and today's denial come at a tense time for Nigeria-Iran relations. This day's foreign affairs correspondent Damilola Oyedele has been covering that story, and she joins us now live on the phone from Abuja. Damilola, I know this is not the first diplomatic incident between Nigeria and Iran, but what do you make of these latest bizarre events?
It's like you said, it's a very bizarre event, because why would Nigerians are wondering what is the link? Why would Iran want to sponsor a plot to kill IBB or Dasuki? IBB, a figure in Nigerian politics, is considered by many as a stabilizing figure. And there are fears now that it could probably have been that terrorist sect Boko Haram or some disgruntled elements in the Nigerian polity are the ones who want to, maybe you could say, decide to eliminate IBB to create more confusion in the polity.
So this individual gets paraded, Damilola, and are we getting more details of the so-called plot to assassinate the former head of state, IBB?
Oh, there are no new details. We all just know that the suspect is being charged to court at the moment. There are no new details on that.
Okay, further afield, there are hints that Iran could be involved in the hostage-taking of the French family further up in Cameroon. Have you heard those reports?
Oh, yes, I've heard those reports, but there are no evidences to suggest that Iran is involved. But right from when France entered Mali to intervene in the crisis, intelligence has suggested that French interests and its nationals are at risk in the sub-region. So there is no evidence pointing to Iran at all, not made public yet. I think I should say that it's not been made public if there is any evidence. But all fingers right now, they point at Boko Haram sect linked to Al-Qaeda, that work basically in northern Nigeria and maybe infiltrating gradually into northern Cameroon.
Obviously, this is going to strain relations further between Abuja and Tehran. Do you agree?
Yes. Yes, I do. You should recall that in 2010, there was a major issue that almost became a diplomatic tussle between the two countries when a shipment of 13 containers of arms and ammunition was apprehended in Lagos. Iran kept mum for over 4 months, and after a while, the Iranian ambassador later opened up and said the shipment emanated from his country. Initially, they denied it, but later they said it came from their country. But they clarified that it was meant for the Gambia in an arms deal agreement with the Gambia. And at the time, the then Iranian ambassador accused the Nigerian authorities of playing games because they made public the seizure of the container immediately after the October 1st bombing in Abuja. And the ambassador wondered then why it had to be, if they had seized the container before then, why they now had to make it public just at that time and present a picture like Iran had something to do with the October 1 bombing at the time. So this is not the first diplomatic incident between the two countries. Also in 2004, there was a report that an Iranian diplomat was arrested in the FCT here in Abuja for spying on the Israeli embassy. At the time, Tehran denied such an arrest.
Damilola, I know you and your colleagues at This Day first broke this story. Good job. Please keep us posted. That's Damilola Oyedele, foreign affairs correspondent for This Day newspaper. Thanks again. Now, Heather.
Thanks very much indeed. Now, the US magazine Essence is paying tribute to powerful black females in Hollywood. As usual, TV powerhouse Oprah Winfrey is on the winners list, but this time she accepted her award with some special guests, a group of starry-eyed students from her school in South Africa.
Essence Magazine's annual gala luncheon at the Beverly Hills Hotel honors the most influential black women in the entertainment industry. On the red carpet, newcomer Naomi Harris. Harris co-starred in Skyfall. The latest Bond movie is the 7th biggest grossing movie of all time.
It's huge for me, because I'm English, and so to be honoured in this way, thousands of miles from your home, is really, really massive. And to be in the same room as these people that I really admire and really respect and are huge icons for me is amazing.
Kwavanjane Wallace, seen here, is the youngest actress to ever be nominated for an Oscar. The 9-year-old is up for Best Actress for her work in the movie Beasts of the Southern Wild. Show business veteran Diane Carroll also attended.
I would love to see the black community and the white community merge so that our desire is to do products more often together. I think that's a long way down the line. So this is a stopgap, and it's a good one.
All the biggest names and best-known faces in black entertainment made an appearance. But it was Power Award winner Oprah Winfrey who stole the show. She brought students from the Girls Leadership Academy, the school she built and operates in South Africa.
I know what they will get today is inspired, because being around the energy of other women who look like you, who have accomplished, who are doing well, who have had struggles but have turned those struggles into triumphs, who have had challenges but have managed it, and you get to see that, and it's a reflection of what your face looks like. Come on, it does not get better than that. Yeah, and you get a new dress too. Yeah.
Winfrey returns to the big screen this year in director Lee Daniels' film The Butler. On the red carpet, she admitted it's not easy to go back to acting after so many years away.
It was strange, because it was like picking up an instrument. Imagine you play the piano or you're a guitarist and you haven't touched it in 14 years, and then you're like, these strings are a little out of tune.
Actress Alfre Woodard also won an award. Past honorees include Halle Berry, Queen Latifah, and Jennifer Hudson. Tina Millman, Arise News.
Those kids must have loved going to that, mustn't
what
they?
a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Great.
Fantastic.
Great. Well, fresh from his cup of rooibos is our business and economics editor, Michael Wilson.
Thanks very much indeed. Now, on the Street of Dreams on Wall Street, stocks rose on the bullish German business survey, showing confidence at a 10-month high. Well, for more from the United States, let's cross live to our correspondent, Chitra Norbat in New York. Chitra, so the struggling Hewlett-Packard actually surprised Wall Street. What's the story behind it, though?
Michael, when is a decrease in profits a good thing? When everyone expects it to be a lot worse. Hewlett-Packard's first quarter profits dropped about 16%, and this was better than analysts' expectations. Wall Street could view this as a positive thing. HP is the largest PC maker, and they're experiencing declining demand in PCs and printers as customers are shifting towards smartphones and tablets. The CEO, Meg Whitman, she says the company is on a 5-year plan to recovery, and part of that is cutting 29,000 jobs this year to boost profits. The company wants to focus on product innovation and improving their go-to-market strategy, and the CEO says that her goal for next year is a return to growth.
Indeed, that'll be interesting to watch. Now, the BP oil spill trial starts, doesn't it? Apart from all the lawyers making millions of dollars, what can we expect?
Michael, this may be a big trial. BP is the star player in a civil trial starting on Monday, and this is over the worst U.S. offshore oil spill in history. One of the other defendants in the case is Halliburton. This oil spill happened about 3 years ago, where 11 men were killed and 4 million barrels of oil were dumped into the Gulf of Mexico. So far, BP has spent about $20 billion in fines, penalties, and settlements. And the U.S. and 5 states, they're looking to prove gross negligence because they feel that this oil spill was both predictable and preventable.
OK, now Pepsi has lost its fizz, hasn't it, in a key Asian market?
Michael, if you go to Thailand right now, you may have difficulty finding Pepsi. Pepsi just ended its 59-year relationship with this bottler in Thailand. This bottler had vast distribution networks, helping Pepsi reach the 67 million people in Thailand. And, you know, Thais, they are the biggest consumer of carbonated beverages across Southeast Asia, so this is a very important market. The bottler has actually just launched a competing product to compete with Pepsi in a similar price range and even a similar Pepsi-like bottle. They are capturing market share, and this is causing Pepsi to now be a scarce commodity.
Chitra, thanks very much indeed. Have a great weekend. Now, in Europe, it's been a case of buying on the dips, what we call here like a jobber's market. Shares took a heavy dive earlier in the week, and even though the European Commission pushed back the Eurozone's return to growth to 2014, the markets have been in the mood for a partial recovery. The euro hit a 6-month low as banks paid back less than expected of their European Central Bank loans, which had been doled out as a result of the recent economic crisis. It means there's plenty of cash in the system to keep a downward pressure on money market rates, and that the banks still feel they need the cash. Now then, if you thought politics is a bit of a laugh, take a look at the joker in the pack in this weekend's Italian elections. He is a hairy stand-up comic called Beppe Grillo. I think so. Anyway, he hosts Italy's most widely read blog and is seriously, believe this, in with a chance of shaking up the country and Europe. Now, he won't beat the main players, but the left-wing Democratic Party might well need him as a coalition partner. Incredibly, this chap here might well get 20% of the vote, which would push three-time Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi into third place. But more importantly, for global investors, if Grillo held the balance of power, he would demand a referendum on Italy's membership of the euro, which, given Italy's record so far, might be very interesting, really. I mean, you know, how many governments since the end of the Second World War? Is it 50 in Italy or something like that?
I know.
And I mean, they haven't had the most wonderful relationship with the euro. It is a serious investment point. Many African companies are directly exposed to Europe, and they'll be watching this with a great deal of interest.
The markets didn't particularly like it, did they? I mean, the fact that this guy could hold the balance of
They
power.
won't. We'll see all about this on Monday.
Maybe
Take it up then.
Maybe what they need is a comedian, Michael.
Yes, well, you could be there.
Or you.
All right.
Anybody could run.
Indeed, so I don't speak Italian,
Thank
fortunately.
you, Michael.
See you
As
later.
always, appreciate it. Good stuff. Time now for a roundup of the other news making headlines today. As police in India continue their investigation into yesterday's deadly twin bomb blast in Hyderabad, new details about the attacks are emerging. It's still unclear who was behind the explosions, but authorities say they were warned about a possible plot by Islamist militants as early as last autumn. Tomorrow, this Bansky artwork goes on sale in Miami for more than over $500,000. Controversially, it was taken from a shop wall in North London. The art dealer selling the piece maintains the work was acquired legally, but the local council in London wants the sale stopped, claiming it was an artwork for the community. And these recently married couples, 25,000 of them, gathered in South Korea to have their unions blessed. It was held at the Unification Church formed by the late Reverend Sang Myung Moon. The church is known for conducting mass weddings of its followers.
Now, the head of the United Nations Population Fund says that African governments must ensure proceeds from their booming energy and mining industries benefit all levels of society. Dr. Babatunde Osetimehin, a former Minister of Health for Nigeria, says politicians and business leaders have a duty to ensure that growth is real growth. He spoke to Arise News' Gavin Hill.
I feel happy, but I also believe that we need to advocate very, very actively to ensure that the growth that is coming out of extractive industry, is translated into real growth, because it is the growth that must happen in, human capital. You must take the money that you are getting from the mines and from oil and gas and invest it in people so that you can build people's strength, because that is what is going to sustain Africa for a long time.
Well, that sounds very simple and straightforward, but what are
I know it's complicated, but I tell you, that's what we have to do.
But what are the complications?
The complication is that we need to get the education system right, good quality education, appropriate for the markets, making sure that we empower young people to be entrepreneurs, because government cannot employ all of them. We cannot, it's not possible. And we must get the private sector, civil society on the table so we can talk the same language and get these young people to be part of the conversation, because it is their lives. Now, I know that that is something that will evolve over time. The other point which I must make very clearly is that as we educate them and provide them the empowerment, we must also, give them comprehensive sexuality education so that they can make choices about their lives, have the number of children they can afford, and ensure that the spacing between one and the other can be assured. Family planning and all of that must be in place for them to make these choices.
Would you say that this is a pan-African challenge, or is it for individual countries to sort out on their own, or does there need to be a cohesive strategy across the continent?
I think there will be strategies at different levels, because I'm an African and I've worked as Minister of Health in Nigeria. And you can say Nigeria is mini Africa. So in different parts of Nigeria, we have to address that, in different ways. And that's what is going to happen for Africa. But there must be a political will in the continent to say this must happen at that level. So big item. But then when it comes to operationalization, we'll take it on a country-by-country basis and then ensure that we respond to the needs of people.
Would you say money is the answer? Is it just about the money?
It's not just the money. In fact, I think it's more about structures, about institutions, and about political will and the need to sustain this. So it's not money. We can find the money to build schools. We can find money to train teachers, but you must inculcate into communities that this is what is going to get you out of poverty, and it must be sustained.
So if everything goes to plan, to your plan, what is your dream? What would you like to see?
What I like to see, a world where every young person's potential is fulfilled, a world where every woman and every young girl can make choices about their lives without coercion, where they can have access to reproductive health and have the number of children they desire and be very happy.
Now we're going to move on to sports, and world number one Rory McIlroy and three-times winner Tiger Woods were both sent packing in stunning fashion in the first round of the WGC Accenture Match Play Championship. McIlroy was knocked out by his good friend and fellow Irishman Shane Lowry. At the same time, Tiger Woods was eliminated from the competition when he lost to American Charles Howell at Dove Mountain. Now, the Six Nations returns this weekend. France travel to Twickenham to face England on Saturday. England are the only team still capable of competing a Grand Slam and are odds-on favourite to win the match and the tournament. The French have made 7 changes to their team that has yet to win a game so far. And in football, Premier League side Swansea City have the chance to lift their first major English trophy in their 101-year history. They take on League Two side Bradford in the League Cup on Sunday. If Swansea win, it will be the first time in the Champions competition's 52-year history that the trophy has been taken outside of England.
Well, our sports correspondent, Ife Fatanazi, is here in the studio. Who do you think is going to win in the Six Nations? On Saturday, is it France? England?
Well, yeah, England versus France. England have won every game. France have lost every game. They've lost to Italy. They've lost to Wales. So we'll see what happens on Saturday, but it's not looking good for them. They've had the worst possible start to the championship in the last, the worst possible start to the championship in 31 years. So they're not doing very well. So both coaches, they have actually changed the teams and they've fielded very heavyweight sides. As you said, the French have made 7 changes. So we'll see if those changes will make a difference on Saturday.
And England's on a roll, aren't they?
Yeah, they've won. Yeah, they've won both games, top of the table. Yeah. The other games, Italy and Wales. That's tomorrow as well. And then on Sunday we've got Scotland taking on Ireland.
How important is it for England to play at Twickenham? I mean, in terms of just pushing them even further.
Well, it's the home advantage, isn't it? So I mean, as I said, they're already on a roll, and they've got the home support behind them. So this is going to be, France are going to have quite an uphill battle, really.
Yeah, let's switch from rugby to football. What's the action this weekend?
Well, it's Bradford versus Swansea. It's the League Cup final. Yeah. So, I mean, you said, yeah, no, Swansea are the odds-on favourite, but Bradford, I mean, don't rule them out. They've, they knocked out Arsenal. They've knocked out quite a series of. They've been the giant killers, exactly that. Yeah. But this game, it's actually away from the football. I'm quite glad about this. But Fabrice Muamba, he's actually going to be presenting the championship. He's going to be presenting the cup to the winning captain.
It's been about a year since he had a heart attack, isn't it?
Exactly that. It was March last year when he had his cardiac arrest. He was on the field, and I mean, I don't even remember, but there were pictures where he was like on the floor. But he's really come back, and everyone's just so excited, and he's just been doing really well. We were talking earlier on that he's now commentating. So even though he's retired from football, he's still got a long career ahead of him, and that's just great to see after, when we thought, when we've all been told to pray for Fabrice Muamba. So it's really great to see him back.
I think people are really behind him, aren't they? They were sort of captured by the story of it, weren't
Exactly.
they?
I remember my sports colleagues all saying that, I've never seen a miracle, and it was really a miracle to see him come back after just, he was dead for 45, he was dead for nearly an hour, so what, 45 minutes. He was dead for a while anyway. So it was just amazing to see him come back, and I know when he comes up to present that cup, he's actually going to present the teams before the game, and he's going to present the cup at the end of the game. So he will definitely get a cheer.
Yeah. Who's your favourite to take that trophy?
Well, I think Bradford. Yes, I appreciate Swansea. I think I want Bradford to win. I think they've just done so well throughout. So I'd really put my money. I'd want them to win. So, we'll see.
Wonderful.
Thanks very much indeed.
As always.
As ever. Thank you. Well, there's just a couple more days to the biggest night in the Hollywood calendar. But as the stars get ready for the Academy Awards, there's a whole team of people working in the background to make sure they look $1 million.
They sparkle. They shine. They're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And every year, Hollywood stars borrow these precious pieces on Oscar night.
Octavia Spencer, when she won her Oscar last year, wore those earrings and this ring.
Some of the biggest names in showbiz will wear Neil Lane jewels at the 85th Academy Awards, showcasing the brand in front of the cameras and fans the world over.
It's like a big ad, a big commercial. Today it's instantaneous. So then you meet people in the Middle East, in France, in Paris. I had clients that call me up, and they may see someone like, Madonna or Angela Jolie wearing something.
Diamonds may be a girl's best friend, but only a star could be trusted to borrow these rocks. The set of jewels worn by Angelina Jolie in 2012 is worth more than $2 million.
These are the earrings that she wore, and a diamond ring. And she also had a beautiful black gown, and she wanted to put diamond pins in the back. So it's hard to see, but when she went down the red carpet, these pins were shimmering.
Jewelry is just one aspect of a star-worthy impression. Stylists, hairdressers, and makeup artists all play their parts in a flawless appearance. Stella Kay is a celebrity makeup artist and knows that the impact of a great look can last beyond awards night.
Yeah. If you're on everybody's best dress, best hairstyle, best makeup list, it's definitely going to mean more jobs probably for that actress in the upcoming year.
On Sunday, Stella will start her day at 5 a.m. and tend to several stars whose names she can't reveal. At $2,000 per session, it will be by far her biggest day of the year.
In one day, you can make your month, maybe 2 months if you're lucky.
The Academy Awards are expected to generate $130 million for the city of Los Angeles. From movie studios to entrepreneurs, everyone wins on Oscar night.
Everybody waiting for Oscar night, I tell you. And it's not just the celebrities who are out there doing their thing. Celebrity chefs too are busy in Hollywood, preparing the most extraordinary feast for the gala on Oscar night. Michael, as always, is here with more details. Michael, what's that about?
It's the Wolfgang Puck. He's the chef.
You've got to be very careful
how
you say that.
And the rest, 1,500 guests at the Governor's Ball. Now, the thing is that in the past, the Governor's Ball's been a bit boring. See, the poor dears have been in that hall for 4 hours. They probably just had a little cup of tea because they don't eat too much.
And
they can't get in their clothes. And a piece of toast and all that kind of stuff. So they're going to be hungry. Now, the losers are going to require some comfort food, aren't they? I mean, there's no question about that.
Macaroni cheese?
Macaroni cheese. Adele, if she's there, will be having vegetarian shepherd's pie.
But she's a winner. She must be a
well,
winner.
yes, she is.
Skyfall.
But Wolfgang has done the whole business. I mean, we know that George Clooney will have steak, for example.
Yeah.
And we know that Barbara Streisand particularly likes caviar in a baked potato, which is actually quite, it's very interesting.
What about Day-Lewis? Lincoln?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
What, the very interesting film that we all want to go and see.
What is he going to have?
He's probably going to have nothing. He's a very ascetic man, actually. He looks very thin. He'll probably chew on a cheese stick, I'd say, or something like that.
But isn't his sister or a relative is his cook, a very well-known chef, Tamsin Day-Lewis?
Yes, absolutely
So
she
he's
is.
used to
Yes,
good
well done.
food.
That's good. So basically, there are 1,500 guests and 1,300 staff feeding these people. So it's actually going to be quite good. But as Heather said, it is a buffet because in the past they've sat down and then they got a bit bored and they haven't been able to sort of chat with their friends and all the rest of it. So they're saying, okay, we're off to the next party. So the hope is that given all this stuff, they'll probably stay there. And we've missed out the most important bit.
Go on.
10 pounds of edible gold dust, which is on the chocolate Oscar statuette.
Are they life-size, are they?
What are they?
Yeah.
Well, that'll take a bit of eating, wouldn't it? Get your lips around a life-size Oscar statuette. I think. Rather interesting, actually.
We're going to have special Oscar coverage on Monday. Just a gentle program reminder right there.
Yes.
At the same time, thank you, Michael, as always.
Yes, I've got my frock ready. Okay, see you on Monday.
See you Monday.